a big welcome and thanks for agreeing to chat with us on the upcoming Densu white paper. This time we're focusing on climate change. My name is Megan. I am a senior strategist for South Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa, and I've been working with your team on the Zero Malaria campaign from a South African perspective, and we've been doing really amazing work. And I think you probably know, but one of our key pillars from a Densu perspective is really being that force for good. And we really pride ourselves in taking quite a vested interest in creating, really valuable and authentic partnerships with organizations that are making a sustainable change across a number of areas. Like your organization and Densu partner Malaria No More. So that being said, could you introduce yourself to our listeners, tell us a little bit about yourself, your role, and then of course, a little bit more about Malaria No More.
Well, thank you so much for having me on your show and for introducing me to your team. I feel like I've been sort of watching the Densu team sort of go on this journey, and it's just so exciting to see this new paper coming out and to see the genuinely I think sort of ground shifting work that you're pursuing as an organisation internationally. So thank you for having me. It's really exciting to see this sort of next stage of Densu's strategy and to be part of this discussion around the new white paper. I've been a big fan of Densu. I've been working with you guys for a number of years now, and to see it all evolving and developing is really exciting. So my name's Kate Wills. I'm the Director of Global Communications and Partnerships at Malaria No More. We're a small charity, but with a huge ambition, and that is the ambition to wipe out malaria for good as soon as possible and to save as many lives along the way. And we've been working with you guys for a number of years now, but most recently on the most ambitious global malaria campaign, I think, in malaria history, called Zero Malaria, and a recent campaign called Draw the Line Against Malaria. And we've been doing that with you over the last 2 years through this challenging COVID time, and it's been extraordinary to watch what we've been able to achieve together.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, I've also, as I said, been working on this campaign, and it's been such an exciting and, as you said, ambitious piece of work. And I think such a departure from traditional malaria campaigns, especially in its look and feel and what it's trying to take on. And I think that's been really amazing. And I mean, from exactly what you're saying now in terms of how we've been partnering over a number of years, that's really why we're chatting today, is because what we're here to discuss is these powerful partnerships between the likes of NGOs, corporates, governments, and different elements of society almost coming together to partner. And as you said, as the global communication director or director of global communications, I couldn't think of a better person to really chat with and pick your brain on. I think you mentioned a number of years. I think we've been working together from about 2017, so around almost 5 years now. We've had this partnership, and yeah, you gave us a little bit of information about the partnership, but could you maybe tell us a little bit more about specifically the partnership with Densu and why you feel it's been a valuable partnership for an organization like Malaria No More?
Well, can I firstly genuinely just take the time to say thank you to you, and I'm sure to many of your other colleagues who've helped. And it's amazing. I keep meeting new people who've been involved, and I haven't had a chance to thank everyone. So yeah. I genuinely know that people sweated a lot, did late nights, volunteered their time at particularly the SARS campaign through a really, really difficult period where I can only imagine some of the pressure that you were all under, as we all had to shift and pivot and all those big words. But I saw some of your colleagues go through that, and I know how hard it's been. And so to see that commitment not just continue through a difficult time, but everyone double down, and everyone realised that it was a really difficult time for malaria, because actually, of course, all the budgets were under constraint, like in so many fields, and actually we were at risk of doubling malaria deaths through COVID. So yeah, to have the opportunity to thank you all is great for me. But now let me tell you what you've done, because it's actually really quite hard to summarize, because like you said, you've been with us since 2017, and you've come on a journey with us. And we sort of started, I think at the start, we didn't even know what we could achieve together, but we still achieved a lot. So in 2017, we started with Common Ground, which some of, I guess, the people watching, listening might know was that extraordinary coming together of the big advertising agencies to work on the global goals together, and to work for common good, I guess, and to collaborate like never before. And we were so excited when Densu chose to work on malaria. We kicked off big. You came on board. We needed to run a global summit for the first time in the UK to really get malaria back on the agenda. And Densu stood by us extraordinarily from day one. You helped us get advertising that literally was a game changer, and you helped us create something which we called the Malaria Creative Collective, where you helped us attract amazing media partners, other creative agencies to help us. And that ended up with extraordinarily bringing 43 heads of government together across the world. And together we raised 4.1 billion for malaria and got a commitment from the Commonwealth to halve malaria by 2023. So we kicked off big. That was 2018. And then what we realized was we had this extraordinary opportunity and need to galvanize the world to achieve this halving malaria commitment. And to do that, we needed to run a really big global campaign that would bring a number of sort of catalytic countries and heads of government together, again, to keep malaria top of the agenda, but also to work towards what we thought would be another summit in Rwanda. It was meant to go ahead in 2020, then it was meant to go ahead in 2021. We're now on for 2022, but obviously it's just been hit right, left, and centre by the COVID challenges. But you know, I really want to take a moment to say I've worked with a lot of communications agencies around the world, and there are not many who could have taken on the brief that you bravely accepted. It's etched in my memory, sort of the day I presented the challenge to the team. And it was, you know, to do this global campaign, but also, as you said, to do it very differently, to have it sort of done with an Africa first agenda. Mm-hmm. And that was really important because, as I'm sure lots of you know, 90% of malaria is in Africa. And actually, a lot of the campaigns up until now had been run sort of from a Western perspective. So we really needed to shift back so that the countries that were sort of at the sort of front edge of experiencing malaria helped us form this creative. And you as a global organization, you were able to reach out to your teams, your strategy teams, your creative teams across the globe. And I think I remember we had like 150 creative submissions across a lot of countries that were directly affected by malaria, not just in Africa, but also in Asia. And I truly believe that global approach, sort of bringing in that breadth of experience, breadth of knowledge, creatively, geographically, but also across the disciplines, you know, starting from the strategy, you know, from day one, we had the strategy teams, the media teams, the creative teams all together. I think that's what's led us to create a campaign which truly has been a game changer.
I think that's so amazing. I mean, just listening to you describe everything that's happened in those last 5 years, you know, it's just amazing to almost say it all in one go, because it is outstanding. And I think, you know, it's so lovely to hear how valuable this kind of partnership between a big corporation or a media agency has been, like, for an NGO. But you know, you spoke about the breadth and the depth of knowledge that, you know, we've been able to provide you. But I think, you know, just as valuable as the partnership has been for you, I think it's as valuable for Densu, because I think, you know, something we're seeing, which I think is such an interesting point on this topic around powerful partnerships, is the need for corporates and other big organizations to get involved with issues, you know, from, you know, everything from climate change, like this paper is designed around, to diversity and representation and healthcare, as in our partner with you. But there's such a fine line to be walked between how do you do that authentically and properly as a big corporate or a big organization. You know, and when your audiences or your consumers are demanding and expecting to see you make change, how do you actually do that in a way that is actually beneficial and worthwhile? And I think that's where the value, almost value exchange between these corporations and NGOs comes in, because it gives these corporations really like a foot in the door, or the expert, like, you know, the knowledge and the expertise that they need to be able to show up authentically in this space. And I think this has just led to, you know, better partnerships and more powerful partnerships. And I think, you know, what I'd like to hear from you as somebody who's been working within a partnership like this is, outside of just you know, our partnership that we have, what is it that you believe? You know, I've given you my opinion now, but what do you think is the thing that makes these kinds of partnerships between, you know, different elements of organization powerful? And what do you think has really accelerated the rise? And we've seen a number of, you know, as you mentioned, the Common Ground Initiative. We've also seen the likes of like competitors like Pepsi and Coca-Cola come together to form partnerships. What do you think has really driven that or accelerated that?
Gosh, there is so much to say about this partnership because, and I think before I go straight into those questions, you know, I've only just touched the tip of the iceberg. And, you know, for me, I truly saw the benefit of an integrated organization. You know, that word is bandied around a lot, but actually, you know, one of the things that worked so well with this partnership was having really good project management, where we all sat together, you know, and wrestled between the different disciplines, and having a very clear strategy and a clear objective, which was to get as many new commitments towards ending malaria, and to also to create, and I haven't said this yet, to create actually a new audience and activate a new generation behind the malaria campaign. So sorry, let me just sorry to explain the context. You know, up until now, malaria, the other thing about the malaria campaigns is they've all sort of been targeted at a sort of older audience, and actually we were missing a massive group, which was young people, which, I mean, you in South Africa know this particularly well, but it's the case in a lot of countries. You know, the percentage of population that's young is on the increase. In Africa, I think we're on 70% or under 35, around that figure. So it was transformational, sort of engaging that audience. But so to go back to your questions, what's behind the rise of these partnerships and how do we make them authentic? I think that was the main questions. I think for me, I've been working in the space for a number of years, and you know, in the early days when you were sort of working with partners maybe outside of your usual sphere, so NGOs working with corporates or whatever, it felt like everything was siloed, you know, so there would be a little bit of CSR, corporate social responsibility, sort of over here as an additional piece. But I think what's happening now is that we're realizing that these big issues, you know, whether it's fighting, you know, big diseases, which well, I think we've all learned over the last year, you know, we live in a globalized world, and actually, you know, what happens in one country affects another country. So I think people's eyes are open that diseases like COVID, like malaria, matter to everyone, even if they're not sort of right on your doorstep right now. And also, of course, with issues like climate change, these issues are no longer, they can't just be put in a box where you sort of do it once a year or you do, they matter to people. And I think we've seen this in lots of surveys, you know, where we see consumers demanding brands that care and that show they care and that are relevant not just to one part of their life, but that show that they're part of their broader life and that they get where they're coming from. We've certainly seen that. You know, one of the partnerships that came off the back of the work we did with Densu was a partnership we have with Viacom and MTV and Nickelodeon across Africa. And I know that the team there, you know, they talk all the time about their viewers needing to see that they care about the big issues in their life and that they're playing a part in that and that they're a responsible organization. So I think there is this big trend, which is wonderful to see, where it's no longer sidelined just to sort of the work of NGOs or an addition. What was your next question?
No problem. I think you've actually answered it perfectly. So it was just around like why they're growing and what makes them, so important. And I think you've answered that. I think it leads me into our next question. Actually, you spoke at the beginning of that answer about how things were historically done quite siloed, and I even the time that I've been working, you're right. Like Densu, South Africa would take on a small little CSR initiative. It would be done by one small team, and it wouldn't really there wouldn't be a lot of interaction between the NGO and the company, or between even the staff working on it and the rest of the company. And I think you did speak about how this has this partnership, and the way that brands are collaborating through the demand of consumers, of course, is changing, and how we work together is changing, and how you described how Densu and Malaria No More work together, is so multifaceted. And I think what I wanted to understand from you is, aside from financial assistance, what do you think are the key things that corporates can now provide to NGOs? I thought of, for example, NGOs might not have always historically had the communication skills that they actually need to be able to amplify such important messages. So often there was this disparity between the good that they were doing and the people that knew about it. And I can imagine that a partnership with a media agency, it's a valuable skill. And then to flip that question, I'll ask you both at once. What do you think corporates can actually start to learn from NGOs and should be learning from NGOs?
Brilliant questions. So thank you. I think that there is so much that we learn by working together. So actually, what I didn't talk about in the last question was also about the NGO world. And the NGO world is also guilty of being in sort of an echo chamber, of speaking to itself. I'm wearing, sorry, I'm trying to get the camera angle better. I'm wearing the Global Goals badge, which I hope lots of you recognize. This is our mandate to take on the Sustainable Development Goals, which were set up in 2015, and Project Everyone led a campaign to make sure that everybody knew what the goals were, so that we could all care about them and we could all do our bit for them. So for me, that's a really good example, actually, of too often I think NGOs are very busy talking to themselves, and actually we're not part of the bigger conversation. So that's equally on us. In terms of what we gain, I so fundamentally believe that this is the transformational piece that's needed. This is the game changer. We need to, it's how things become sustainable, because we can share platforms, we can get we can reach new audiences in different ways. Densu, what you gave the malaria campaign was truly extraordinary. So it was to help us think differently, the essence of creativity, of thinking fresh and originally, sort of looking at a challenge in a new way. But you also lent us I guess the discipline of corporate strategy, which, I believe NGO strategies are good, but I think, actually where we put heads together and really bash them together on strategies, where we can make them even stronger. And that was certainly the case working with you guys. And then, of course, what we were able to do is we brought together a coalition of extraordinary NGOs and malaria organizations, from the Bill Gates Foundation, the United Nations, the African Union, the Commonwealth, the royal sort of families, celebrities. We brought those, but you then brought together your extraordinary range of both clients, but also media partners. And it's where you put your assets together. That's where magic happens. That's where you can leverage so much more by sort of truly sort of bringing each other things you didn't have in the first place. Looking looking at value add. I think that's really, really critical. In terms of, I guess, sort of on the broader piece, what we also need is I guess, a share of the marketing budget. So the marketing budgets that you have, for the likes of the big brands are extraordinary compared to the marketing budgets which we have for issues, whether it be COVID, whether it be climate change, whether it be malaria. And I, for one, I sort of fundamentally wrestle with that. I'm like, what are we doing as a culture? Why are we putting all our money into the big products, not the big issues that will mean that life can continue, and there can be more equity and more people can live better, longer, more fulfilling life, and we can look after the nature and the world that we live in. So I think, that said, the reality is that it will probably always be that way, because that's the way that the world works. So actually, where you bring those budgets together and you start to share them, then it's win-win. The brands hopefully get a richer story. They make their consumers feel better. They become genuinely more sustainable, and then we share our assets better across the communities.
Yeah, I mean, and that for me is what's really sitting at the crux of what makes a partnership powerful. Is it's almost like both can exist individually. The corporate can exist and the NGO can exist, but neither can. It feels like in the world that we live in, neither can fully leverage their potential. The corporate for doing good, and we know lots of corporates have lots of wrongs to right, but then also that NGO, and it's this exactly how you describe this coming together of these two organizations that have such specific skill sets, that really feels like it's actually going to make a difference, and it's actually going to start moving the needle and making change.
And I think what I would say, if I could come in, I'm really excited to see brands like Vogue, Edward Enninful's agenda for Vogue, bringing diversity to the heart of I think it's now the global Vogue offering. And that's not done just out of sort of some need to do good for just philanthropic purposes. That's got a solid business basis behind it. You look at, the strategy behind Unilever and Paul Polman. Again, I think, they proved that it made business sense to sort of mix these agendas and not to have them separate. So I think we're truly in an exciting time in terms of bringing those pieces together. And Densu, certainly what I've seen firsthand with the partnership that we've had together, that's absolutely the truth. I mean, you've taken, by leveraging your skill set into the challenge of ending this oldest, deadliest disease, you've taken the malaria campaign to a whole new level. It's very exciting, and it's sustainable and can continue, which is also really important.
Yeah, and that is such a, I mean, you're right. I think this idea that, such an interesting point, that this idea that companies just had to be doing something for the good of it, but actually, everyone in this, unfortunately, the way the world's set up, things have to be sustainable from a business perspective, and then, we also want to be ensuring that, NGOs like Malaria No More are sustainable, and that everybody is actually benefiting from the growth and the spread of better, So, I mean, I think that sort of leads me to my last two questions, so we can wrap up. But I think we love and know the partnership between, yourself and us. If you had to summarize what you think the key success factors are between, the governments, NGOs, and corporates are that will make these partnerships even more successful in the future, and what should we actually be looking for and be looking to achieve? I know that's a tough question, but in your opinion and your expertise, what do you think it is that we should be focusing on?
So I think what's really interesting when you say governments, corporations, NGOs, when I hear you talk about those three, I hear the first thing that comes to mind is world leaders. So we often talk about the need to influence the leaders of the world to make the right decisions, to do the right thing in their short-term strategies, in their long-term, and to reach them. And when I talk about leaders, I don't think just about heads of government or heads of state. I think about the mix, because we're in such a complex world now, where some companies have bigger budgets than countries, so the influence is really spread across quite a mix. So I think what that takes me to is to a space of collaboration. Again, I think that's probably the key theme. It's about bringing together great brains and bringing together power in its different guises. Power, whether that's the power to change policy, which is of course vital. Power, whether it's the opportunity to speak to the public, to engage an audience, which is something you guys, are so brilliant at. Leaders need to know that public care, public need to know what's happening, and need to feel empowered to make change happen. And corporations, they have such an extraordinary opportunity to bring messages to the high street, to make game-changing decisions in terms of what they choose to finance, in terms of how they make their products, in a multitude of ways. But the common factor here is about leadership, and about really harnessing power across different sectors and directing it to make change happen, and sustainable change. So I think partnerships that can look to sort of bringing this power play together, I think that's where you get big change happening. And that's certainly where I'm really proud of our partnership together, because we've not only together changed, global commitments. We've brought heads of government together. We've spoken directly to leaders of government, but we've also, you've helped us work with corporations, with brands that can take the message across countries, across markets, and that speaks both to power but also to the public. And then you've helped us empower, well, certainly in the case of Zero Malaria, a new generation that can create a movement. So these things, I think the danger is in the past, we tend to look, as I've said before, in silos, or look one thing or another, but actually, of course, they're all interlinked. So we need good strategists like yourself who are able to think about this complex world that we live in, and how we bring these things together, how we work together sustainably.
Yeah, I love that. That thought around. It's so true that the people that are making decisions don't, it's not necessary anymore to have a presidential title, or to be a leader of a country. And I think that's such a good key point to almost wrap up on, is just this idea that the key decision makers within the brands that we work with, that Densu works with, they actually have the power and the potential to create this fundamental change that you're speaking about, and that we have actually managed to achieve through this partnership that we have. And I think, I'm really happy that that's almost the last point that we've touched on, is just we need to start thinking of everybody as a key decision maker, like you said, all the way from the public to the corporation, and then obviously to the government leaders. But thinking of everybody as some kind of leader is such a good point.
And I think, I really hope that, certainly from my perspective, working with Densu, I have seen an extraordinary appetite for collaboration, and that is not always the case. There is still, I know why competition exists, but sometimes it gets in the way of the mission. And actually, I think what I saw in so many ways with our Densu partnership with you guys, is not just an appetite to collaborate across your multitude of internal brands and your geographical entities, but also to enter into a partnership with us where you knew there was this great coalition that we were wrangling with, to understand the challenges that presented, but also how the opportunities outweighed the challenges. But you went beyond that, to collaborate with your media partners and with who it took really to get the job done. And I think when you see a brand rise above its ego, I guess, and work collaboratively like that for good, that's when magic happens. That's when we can make extraordinary change. And that's what I think has happened with this Zero Malaria, Draw the Line Against Malaria campaign in so many different ways. So much to say.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think let's just hope that we can continue to partner together, and that these kind of partnerships just become the norm for all corporations and NGOs. So yeah, I just want to say thank you so much. It's been a pleasure working on the Zero Malaria campaign. It's been challenging and exciting. And it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you today. And I really just want to thank you for your time and your partnership.
Well, no, right back at you guys, and to everyone. Thank you for the sweat, blood, and tears that you shared. All the greatest things we do are also sometimes the hardest things we do. We have achieved so much together. There is so much more we're going to do. I'm so excited to have your team with us. And just good luck. I mean, to see Densu extending its ambition to climate change is beyond exciting, and all the other things I know you're looking at with your strategy. So congratulations for not shying away from really hard things and for actually applying your brilliance to them. I can't wait to see what you achieve. Thank you.